March 5, 2009, London, England. The O2 Arena. Michael Jackson stands on stage before thousands of ecstatic fans and dozens of cameras broadcasting live across the globe. He wears his signature black jacket, hat and sunglasses, masking the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight loss his costume can barely hide, and the trembling in his hands that no one in the audience can see. "This is it," he says, his voice not as strong as it once was, softer now. "This is the final curtain call. I'll be performing the songs my fans want to hear. This is it, and when I say this is it, I really mean it." The crowd erupts. Tickets for the first 10 concerts sell out within the first 4 hours. Demand is so overwhelming that the organizers, AEG Live, add more dates. 20 concerts, then 30, then 40, and finally, 50 concerts. The most legendary comeback tour in music history. Michael Jackson smiles for the cameras, but backstage, away from the lights and the eyes of the public, he turns to his assistant and whispers, "I can't do this. I can't do 50 shows. They're gonna kill me." 3 months and 20 days later, Michael Jackson would pass away at the age of 50. The concerts, unfortunately, would never happen, and the world would learn that the king of pop had played his final and most tragic role, pretending to be strong enough to survive the comeback that would ultimately destroy him. This is the untold story of how 50 concerts turned into a death sentence. To understand how Michael Jackson ended up in a situation that would kill him, you have to understand how desperate he'd become by 2008. The man who once owned the Beatles catalogue, who'd sold over 400 million records worldwide, who'd been the most famous person on the planet, was broke. Not just low on cash, actually genuinely broke, drowning in debt that exceeded $400 million. How does that happen? How does someone with Michael Jackson's success end up financially ruined? The answer is complicated, tragic, and entirely preventable. It started with the child molestation accusations in 1993. Michael was acquitted in the 2005 trial, but the damage was done. His reputation was destroyed. Radio stations stopped playing his music. Sponsors abandoned him. The public that once adored him now looked at him with suspicion and disgust. Then there was the spending. Michael lived like royalty, literally. Neverland Ranch cost millions annually to maintain, with its zoo, amusement park rides, and staff of over 100 people. He spent money like water. Tens of millions on antiques, art, jewelry, gifts for friends and strangers. He supported his entire family financially, covering his siblings' expenses and his parents' lavish lifestyle. But the real killer was the loans. Michael had borrowed hundreds of millions using his music catalog as collateral. The interest alone was costing him millions per month. By 2008, he was on the verge of losing everything: his catalog, Neverland, his entire legacy. That's when Randy Phillips entered the picture. Phillips was the CEO of AEG Live, one of the world's largest concert promotion companies. He saw opportunity in Michael's desperation. A Michael Jackson comeback tour, marketed correctly, could gross hundreds of millions, maybe even $1 billion. Phillips flew to Las Vegas, where Michael was living in a rented mansion, hiding from creditors. The meeting was tense. Michael looked terrible, gaunt, frail, walking with a cane at age 49. But Phillips didn't care about Michael's health. He cared about the business opportunity. 10 concerts at the O2 Arena in London, Phillips proposed. "We'll call it This Is It. Your final tour ever. The farewell tour fans have been waiting for. We'll gross over 100 million, easy. Enough to clear your debts and set you up for life." Michael was hesitant. He hadn't toured since 1997, hadn't performed a full concert in over a decade. His body wasn't what it used to be. His voice had weakened. His confidence was shattered. But the alternative was bankruptcy, public humiliation, losing his children's inheritance. AEG was offering him salvation, or at least that's what Phillips promised. 10 shows, Michael finally agreed. "I can do 10 shows. Phillips smiled. But the contract Michael signed that day wasn't for 10 shows. Buried in the legal language were clauses allowing AEG to add additional dates as market demand requires. Michael either didn't read it carefully or didn't understand what he was signing. His longtime attorney had died recently, and he was relying on advisors who didn't have his best interests at heart. When the concerts were announced on March 5, 2009, and demand proved astronomical, AEG started adding dates. Michael would wake up to texts from Phillips. "Great news, we added 10 more shows." Then the fans demanded it. 20 more shows. The numbers kept climbing. Michael kept protesting. AEG kept adding dates. By the time the press conference happened, Michael had been locked into 50 concerts between July 2009 and March 2010. 53-hour performances, intensive choreography, complex staging, all while dealing with chronic pain, insomnia, and the psychological trauma of being Michael Jackson. Backstage after the announcement, Michael's manager, Frank DiLeo, found him sitting alone, head in his hands. "Frank, I can't do 50 shows, Michael said. "I'm 50 years old. My back hurts. My feet hurt. I can't sleep. How am I supposed to do 50 shows? You signed the contract, Mike. You're locked in." "But I didn't agree to 50. I agreed to 10. The contract says AEG can add dates. You signed it." Michael looked at Frank with something close to despair. "They're going to kill me, Frank. This is going to kill me." Frank didn't respond, because deep down he wondered if Michael was right. Rehearsals for This Is It began in April 2009 at Michael's rented mansion in Holmby Hills, Los Angeles, and later moved to the Forum and then Staples Center. From the beginning it was clear something was wrong. Kenny Ortega, the show's director and choreographer, had worked with Michael for years. He knew what prime condition Michael Jackson looked like. This wasn't it. This was a shadow, a ghost of the performer who'd once electrified stadiums. Michael would show up late to rehearsals, sometimes 2 or 3 hours late. When he did arrive, he was often disoriented, moving slowly, speaking in whispers. Some days he seemed energized, focused, the old Michael shining through. Other days he could barely stand. The dancers and musicians noticed. During the rehearsal footage that would later become the This Is It documentary, you can see Michael struggling. He's wearing multiple layers of clothing, even though the rehearsal space is warm. He's shockingly thin, his cheekbones jutting out, his legs looking skeletal in his pants. Kenny Ortega would pull him aside between numbers. "Michael, are you okay? Do you need some rest?" "I'm fine, Kenny. Just tired. I haven't been sleeping well." "Are you eating?" "You need to eat, Michael." "I eat. Don't worry about me." But everyone was worried. Production assistants whispered to each other. Dancers exchanged concerned glances. The backup singers noticed his voice cracking on songs he'd sung flawlessly thousands of times. One dancer, a young woman named Maria, found Michael sitting alone in a hallway during a break. He was shivering despite wearing a jacket and scarf. "Mr. Jackson, are you cold?" Michael looked at her with eyes that seemed to see through her to somewhere else. "I'm always cold now. I don't know why. I can't get warm." Maria wanted to say something, do something, but what could she do? He was Michael Jackson. She was just a backup dancer. And everyone around him, the managers, the producers, the handlers, they all seemed focused on making sure the show would go on, not on whether Michael could survive it. By early June, Michael's attendance at rehearsals had become erratic. He'd miss entire days, then show up unexpectedly at night, wanting to run through numbers when everyone was exhausted. Kenny Ortega sent emails to AEG executives expressing concern. One email, dated June 14th, stated, "Michael is not ready for this. He's not eating, he's not sleeping, he's deteriorating before our eyes. We need to get him help immediately, or we need to postpone." AEG's response was not to postpone, it was to send Dr. Conrad Murray to the rehearsal space. Dr. Murray was Michael's personal physician, hired by AEG at Michael's request for $150,000 per month. His official job was to keep Michael healthy enough to perform, but what he was actually doing was enabling an addiction that would kill his patient. Michael Jackson had suffered from insomnia for years, a condition worsened by the pressure of fame, the trauma of accusations, the chronic pain from decades of dancing. He'd been prescribed sleeping medications by various doctors, building up tolerance until normal sleep aids didn't work anymore. Somewhere along the line, Michael discovered propofol. Propofol is a powerful anesthetic used in surgeries. It's not a sleeping medication, it's used to render people unconscious during medical procedures. It requires constant monitoring, specialized equipment, and should only be administered in hospital settings. But Michael called it his milk because of its milky white appearance, and convinced Dr. Murray to give it to him at home. Every night, Murray would hook Michael up to an IV drip of propofol, watch him drift into chemical unconsciousness, and monitor him through the night. In the morning, Michael would wake up, technically not having slept at all, but having been unconscious, and go to rehearsals. This wasn't sleep, this was medically induced unconsciousness masquerading as rest, and it was destroying Michael's body. Kenny Ortega didn't know about the propofol, he just knew that Michael was declining rapidly. On June 19, 2009, Michael showed up to rehearsal at Staples Center, looking so ill that Kenny sent him home. "Michael, you're not well, you're shaking, you can barely stand. I'm stopping rehearsal and sending you home to rest." Michael protested weakly. "I'm fine, I can do this, I have to do this." "No, you need help, Michael, real help. Not whatever you're getting now." That night, Kenny sent another email to Randy Phillips at AEG. "We have a real problem here. Michael is physically and emotionally deteriorating. I believe we need to suspend rehearsals and get him professional help, or this will end badly." Randy Phillips's response was to call a meeting with Dr. Murray and essentially threaten the doctor. If Michael didn't show up to rehearsals ready to perform, Murray would lose his $150,000 monthly salary. The message was clear: whatever you're doing to keep Michael going, do more of it. Dr. Murray got the message. He would later testify that he felt pressured by AEG to keep Michael functional at all costs, and the cost would be Michael Jackson's life. June 24, 2009. Staples Center. Final full rehearsal before the tour moves to London for opening night on July 13th. Against all expectations, Michael shows up and delivers. He runs through full numbers. They Don't Care About Us, Billie Jean, Earth Song. His voice is strong. His dancing, while not prime Michael Jackson, is good enough. He seems energized, focused, present. Kenny Ortega is relieved. Maybe the meeting with Dr. Murray worked. Maybe Michael rallied. Maybe everything will be okay. Michael stays until past midnight, running through songs, working with the band, adjusting lighting cues. He seems almost manic with energy, as if he's trying to prove something to everyone who doubted him. "See," he says to Kenny, "I told you I could do this. Tomorrow we're going to London, and we're going to show them what Michael Jackson can do." But Dr. Murray knows the truth. That energy, that sudden improvement, it's not real. It's the result of a cocktail of medications Murray has been giving Michael: benzodiazepines for anxiety, propofol for sleep, and other drugs to counteract the side effects. Michael isn't healthy. He's chemically animated, a puppet dancing on strings made of prescription drugs. After rehearsal ends at 12:30 a.m., Michael goes home to his rented mansion on Carrollwood Drive in Holmby Hills. He's lived there only a few months, a temporary residence while preparing for the tour. The house is nice but sterile, not really a home, just another rental in a lifetime of temporary places. Dr. Murray is waiting. He's been living at the house, available around the clock to tend to Michael's medical needs, which mainly means helping him sleep. "I need to rest, Dr. Murray," Michael says. "Real rest. I can't do this anymore without sleep." "I'll take care of you, Mr. Jackson, don't worry." What happens over the next several hours would later be reconstructed by investigators, prosecutors, and the media. Dr. Murray's own testimony would provide much of the timeline, though many doubted his version of events. According to Murray, Michael couldn't sleep despite being given lorazepam, a benzodiazepine, around 1:30 a.m. At 2 a.m., Murray gave him midazolam, another sedative. Still, Michael couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., Murray gave him another dose of lorazepam. At 5 a.m., yet another dose of midazolam. None of it worked. Michael was wide awake, anxious, begging for relief. "Give me the milk, Dr. Murray. It's the only thing that works. Please, I need to sleep." Dr. Murray hesitated. He'd been trying to wean Michael off propofol, knowing how dangerous it was. But Michael was desperate, and Murray was tired, and the tour was about to start, and AAG was expecting Michael to perform. At approximately 10:40 a.m. on June 25, 2009, Dr. Conrad Murray administered 25 milligrams of propofol to Michael Jackson through an IV drip. Michael drifted into unconsciousness. Finally, peace. Finally, silence. Finally, the escape from pain and pressure, and the impossible expectations of being Michael Jackson. Dr. Murray claimed he stayed by Michael's side, monitoring him. But at some point, and this is where his story becomes questionable, Murray left the room. He said he went to the bathroom. Phone records show he made several calls during this time, including a 32-minute call to his girlfriend. When Murray returned to the bedroom, something was wrong. Michael wasn't breathing. He had no pulse. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. Dr. Murray panicked. Instead of immediately calling 911, he started CPR on the bed, which is ineffective because beds are too soft. He called Michael's assistant, asking for help. He called Michael's security. He gathered up medication bottles, trying to hide evidence. It wasn't until 12:21 p.m., nearly 2 hours after Michael likely stopped breathing, that someone finally called 911. The 911 call is haunting to listen to. The dispatcher asks about the patient's condition. The security guard who's relaying information from Dr. Murray sounds confused and frightened. He's not responding to anything. No, he's not breathing. And he's not conscious either. No, he's not conscious. Okay, do you have him on the floor? There's confusion. Dr. Murray is still doing CPR on the bed. The dispatcher has to tell them to move him to a hard surface. Precious minutes tick by. Paramedics arrived at 12:26 p.m. They found Michael Jackson in his bedroom, CPR being performed by Dr. Murray, bottles of medications visible on the nightstand. They could tell immediately that Michael had been dead for some time. His body was cool, he had lividity indicating blood had pooled in his lower extremities. But Dr. Murray insisted they try to resuscitate. They spent 42 minutes attempting revival, knowing it was futile, before finally transporting Michael to UCLA Medical Center. At 2:26 p.m. on June 25, 2009, Michael Jackson was pronounced dead. The official cause of death would later be determined as acute propofol intoxication combined with other sedatives. The manner of death, homicide. The news broke within minutes. TMZ reported it first. Michael Jackson had suffered cardiac arrest and was rushed to the hospital. Then the confirmation. Michael Jackson was dead at age 50. The world stopped. Major news networks interrupted regular programming. In Los Angeles, crowds gathered outside UCLA Medical Center, outside Michael's home, outside the Staples Center where just hours earlier he'd been rehearsing. People wept openly, strangers embracing each other, unable to process that the king of pop was gone. But for those closest to the situation, shock quickly turned to questions. How did this happen? Why did this happen? Who was responsible? The investigation focused immediately on Dr. Conrad Murray. His behavior after Michael's death was suspicious. The delay in calling 911, the apparent attempt to hide medications, his inconsistent statements to police. Within days, law enforcement declared Michael's home a crime scene. As details emerged about the propofol, about Dr. Murray's nightly administration of surgical anesthesia in a home setting, without proper monitoring equipment, public opinion turned furious. This wasn't natural causes. This wasn't an accidental overdose. This was medical negligence at best, manslaughter at worst. But Murray wasn't the only target of blame. AEG Live came under intense scrutiny. Emails emerged showing that executives knew Michael was struggling, knew he was unwell, but pressured him and Dr. Murray to keep going. One email from an AEG executive stated, "We're paying Murray $150K a month to get Michael to rehearsals. He better earn his money." Michael's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against AEG, arguing that the company had created the conditions that killed Michael, the impossible schedule, the financial pressure, the hiring of Dr. Murray specifically to keep Michael functioning rather than healthy. The trial, which took place years later, revealed devastating details. Emails showed AEG executives mocking Michael's deterioration, calling him a freak, and questioning whether he could actually perform. Yet they kept adding shows, kept pushing dates, kept building a tour that Michael's body couldn't sustain. Kenny Ortega testified about the meetings where he expressed concerns and was essentially told to stay in his lane. Dancers testified about Michael's physical decline. Medical experts testified that the level of propofol in Michael's system was consistent with surgical anesthesia, not sleep therapy. The picture that emerged was tragic. Michael Jackson, desperate to restore his legacy and clear his debts, had signed a deal that required more than his body could give. AEG, seeing dollar signs, had pushed forward despite clear signs of medical emergency. And Dr. Murray, caught between his patient's desperate pleas and his employer's financial expectations, had made the fatal decision to keep administering dangerous drugs. Dr. Conrad Murray was convicted of involuntary manslaughter in 2011 and served 2 years of a 4-year sentence. The conviction brought some satisfaction but felt hollow. Murray was just one piece of a much larger system that had failed Michael. The AEG civil trial ended with a verdict in AEG's favor. The jury found that while AEG had hired Murray, they were not liable for his actions because the contract wasn't fully executed. Michael's family received no compensation, but the trial exposed the ugly machinery behind modern concert touring, where artists are pushed to physical limits for profit. This Is It footage was released as a documentary in October 2009. Watching it knowing what happened is heartbreaking. You can see Michael trying so hard, pushing through exhaustion, attempting to recapture his former glory. In some moments he succeeds, the magic is still there, the talent undeniable, but you can also see the signs everyone missed or ignored. The way he stops mid-song, looking disoriented, the way he needs help upstairs, the way his voice cracks on notes he'd once hit effortlessly, the way he says multiple times, "I'm saving my voice for the shows," as if he knew he was running on empty, but was trying to conserve what little he had left. The 50 concerts never happened. The comeback that was supposed to restore Michael Jackson's legacy instead became his death sentence. All those fans who bought tickets, millions of people in total, would never see the show. The elaborate staging, the new arrangements of classic songs, the magic Michael was supposed to deliver, it all died with him. 15 years have passed since June 25, 2009. Michael Jackson's children, Prince, Paris and Blanket, now known as Biggie, have grown up without their father. They were 11 and 7 years old when he died. Now they're adults, navigating life with the complicated legacy of being Michael Jackson's children. Paris has been particularly vocal about her father's death, suggesting in interviews that she believes it was murder, that her father told her people were trying to hurt him. Whether there's truth to those claims, or whether they're the grief-fueled suspicions of a daughter who lost her father too young, we'll never know for certain. What we do know is that the circumstances of Michael's death were entirely preventable. If AEG had postponed the tour when Kenny Ortega raised alarms, if Dr. Murray had refused to administer propofol in a home setting, if Michael had been honest about his limitations instead of trying to be superhuman, if. But Michael Jackson lived his entire life trying to meet impossible expectations. He became famous at age 7 with the Jackson 5, never had a childhood, never got to be normal. Every aspect of his life was performance on stage and off. He was expected to be perfect, to be legendary, to be more than human. The 50 concerts were just the final fatal extension of that impossible standard. Michael Jackson couldn't do 50 shows, no 50-year-old with his health issues and history could, but he signed the contract anyway because he was Michael Jackson, and Michael Jackson didn't fail. Michael Jackson delivered. Michael Jackson was magic, except Michael Jackson was also human, and humans have limits, and when you push past those limits, eventually something breaks. The tragedy isn't just that Michael Jackson died, the tragedy is that he died trying to prove he was still the king of pop, still relevant, still worthy of love. He died trying to give fans what they wanted: 50 concerts, the comeback of the century, the Michael Jackson they remembered from Thriller and Bad and Dangerous. But what fans really wanted, what we all should have wanted, was for Michael to be healthy, to be happy, to have the peaceful life he'd never gotten to live. We wanted the performance more than we wanted the person, and in demanding the performance we lost both. The concert footage exists. The rehearsal videos show glimpses of what This Is It could have been. And yes, it would have been spectacular. Michael, even diminished, was still more talented than most artists at their peak. But we'll never know if those 50 concerts would have been worth the price Michael paid to attempt them. We'll never know if the comeback would have restored his legacy or just extended his suffering. What we do know is this: Michael Jackson died because 50 concerts were more important to the people around him than his life. He died because profit margins mattered more than health. He died because everyone, AEG, Dr. Murray, his managers, maybe even himself, chose the performance over the person. In his final rehearsal, Michael sang Earth Song, a powerful ballad about environmental destruction and human suffering. There's footage of him, frail and exhausted, pouring everything he had left into that performance. His voice cracks, his body shakes, but the passion is still there. The soul is still there. At the end of the song, Michael collapses to his knees, head bowed, arms outstretched. It looks like a performance choice, a dramatic ending, but knowing what we know now, it looks like something else. It looks like surrender. It looks like a man who's given everything and has nothing left to give. That was June 24, 2009. Less than 24 hours later, Michael Jackson would be dead. The king of pop, the man who changed music forever, killed by the very thing he loved most, the show. This is it. That's what he said at the announcement. This is it. And he was right. It was the end. Not the comeback he promised, just the end. If this story made you think about the price of fame and the cost of comebacks, subscribe to Hidden Legends Stories, leave a comment. Should This Is It tour have been postponed? Was Michael Jackson's death preventable? What do you think really happened? Next time we'll explore another legend who gave everything for their art. Until then, remember, sometimes the greatest performance is knowing when to stop performing.